Good morning and welcome to Onward in Love and Caregiving. And as you can tell by the presence of Jean, this is one of our very special broadcasts where we're going to be sharing with you one of our very dear friends and a guest in just a moment. But first, Jean, welcome. 14,000 miles away. You're in Jakarta. It's nighttime. It's morning time here. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Greg. Good evening from rainy Jakarta. And I think right now it's quite chilly in New York. So I would expect to have a warmer welcome when I arrive sometimes next month, because I would expect that this will be the last time that we will have a broadcast like 14,000 miles away. Then for the next one, well, we will do that one, of course, with our special guest, but from the same place. So that will be much more interesting.
I think that's the most exciting thing in the world. But we have been so blessed to do I call it the 14,000 mile duet. And we've had such fun with these wonderful guests, and they're all now looking forward to meeting you. Actually, some of them you have met in person on previous trips long ago when we could all travel. But yes, as they say, the best is yet to come. And I can't wait for all of you to meet Gene. We'll have to do a program where I just chat with him. We might be surprised.
That will be lovely. And it's a privilege for both of us right now. We have our dearest friend, Matt Kuddish from Nami. And it's a very related topic because we are experiencing this one in a different way. When you have your loved one like miles away or something, and we're so fortunate that we can have our time, the GNG time, like twice a day, just to have the opportunity to talk with and also to share what we are experiencing. But some people might not have that opportunity, and that is related with Matt is going to share about the mental illness. Because what we noticed that so many people do not have like a special person, or maybe just like the special time, just to share what they feel, and they try to keep it by themselves. And sometimes they do not realize that actually they do have the problem. So this will be interesting just to hear what Matt and Nami have been working on with this mental illness, and also try to help so many people with this organization. So, Greg, why don't I just try to share who is Matt and what is Nami?
Wonderful, and what a beautiful introduction. Thank you. Yes, there is our good friend Matt, whom they will be meeting in a moment. And the contact information is here, and we'll put this back up at the end of the broadcast too. All right, Gene?
Right.
Yes.
Yes, that will be good. So then right now, it's time just to have our friend Matt, drum roll.
Perfect. Matt, welcome.
Hello, great to be here. Thanks.
And thank you, Gene. We'll see you in a short time.
Yes. So, Matt, thank you for your time. So it's good to have you here. So, Greg and Matt, I'll join you a little bit later.
All
Thanks,
right.
Gene.
Thank you, Gene. Wonderful. It's so wonderful. I was so thrilled with Gene's introduction. Now, first of all, let's state the name of your organization, and then we'll go back a little bit to how we know each other. You are the executive director, is that correct?
It is.
Yes. For NAMI of New York. Now, tell us what NAMI stands for.
Sure. It's the National Alliance on Mental Illness of New York City.
Terrific. And how long have you been with them now?
I started in July of 2017, so a little over 4 years.
Oh my heavens.
Yeah, and time is soup, I heard someone say recently. Living like this for nearly 2 years, I've sort of lost, I'm unmoored as it relates to time, and it's so hard to imagine how that it's only been 4.5 years, or that it's been already 4.5 years.
It's both, isn't it?
Yes.
There are so many things like that. I quite agree with you. There are moments when I think it just happened, and then in the other way, I say, oh, that was so long ago, because I even get mixed up on what was the date that I last saw Donnie at the house in Bali. I mean, I'll suddenly go, which year was that? And I have to go back. It's really, really true. But you have done so much, and we're going to get into this, because I think your organization and what you have led this charge of taking the challenge of COVID, and that is putting it in the most positive way possible, and to find new and wonderful opportunities. But we'll get back to that, because I want folks to know, Matt and I actually met when in your previous role. He had been, and I get mixed up on titles, but you had been affiliated with the wonderful organization that you've heard me talk about so often on this program, Caring Kind, which is the ultimate, in my opinion, organization dealing with Alzheimer's. And on many, many occasions, Matt came. He was part of the original founding group of the New York City Family Caregiver Coalition. And then when we started the Emblem Health New York City Partnership for Family Caregiving Corps. We started so many organizations, I forget all the names. But one thing that was certain was Matt was always there, and a very vital presence and a very creative presence, as you will hear. And during his time at Caring Kind, he was very active in speaking about the mission. He spoke on many occasions at caregiving events that I was speaking at. We shared the floor many, many times, as well as he came to Emblem to speak to our employees, because, of course, the original purpose of starting the caregiving program at Emblem Health, our focus was and continues to be our employees and our members. But we start with the employees because they are both professional caregivers and family caregivers. And Matt spent so much time with us, educating us, and it was terrific. And then all of you began doing those wonderful outreach programs for clergy. And that's something that you're going to be replicating with NAMI. And so there are many of you out there who watch these programs, who are clergy, who are social workers, who are people of various diverse faiths. This is an organization you need to know about. It's an organization you need to understand is there. And the best part is, if we were doing a commercial, is it's free. That's a word you don't hear very often in New York. And that's not why it's wonderful, but it's because what makes it accessible to so many people. So anyhow, that's where we all began. Why don't you add anything you like, Matt? And then why don't you share with us, where did NAMI begin? And also, because we have people who are all over the United States and frankly all over the world. We've just had some new people join us from both Bhutan and New Zealand. So you're speaking to a very international group of people, and mental health, mental illness is part of that conversation. And we're seeing it more and more because of the stresses and the fatigue that COVID has brought to us. So you take it away.
Yeah. And I appreciate so much of what you're saying and the journey that kind of brought me here today. You know, I worked in aging and caregiving and Alzheimer's disease for about 15 years. And people said, what are you doing? You're doing this 180, moving into mental illness and mental health. And what I realized is there's so much more in common with the two than there is different. Certainly, Alzheimer's is not a mental illness, but the impact that mental illness and Alzheimer's or other dementias have on the individual, their ability to play an active role in their planning and well-being, the impact that they each have on family members and friends, the stigma that's so enormous in each. And so they're pretty closely aligned in so many ways. I think one of the prominent differences, at least right now, is that unfortunately they are not advancing in treatments or cures in Alzheimer's disease at the rate anyone would hope they'd be able to do, although they're certainly trying. And in mental illness, there is hope for recovery. There truly is an understanding that for most people with the right support and the right interventions, despite living with a serious mental health diagnosis, you can live a rich and full and rewarding life. And so that hope is something that is really easy to help to use to stay motivated and get up every morning. And I think it's actually really misunderstood. You know, we do so much education because if you ask people on the street, what do you know about bipolar disorder? What do you know about schizophrenia? What do you know about depression? I don't think most people would say, oh, I don't really know anything. Tell me. I think people think they understand what these words, what these conditions mean, the way they impact people, who they impact. And I think that's often informed by what we see or what we read or what we hear. And that isn't always the most accurate, portrait. And I think in other cases, people who've experienced mental illness, either themselves or in the life of someone they care about, they often will see people generalize their experience as the experience. So I've had depression. So if you're saying you have depression, it must be the same thing that I've experienced. And what we know is if you've met one person who's affected by mental illness, you've met one person. And I think we can say bipolar disorder you'll see people with, depressive moods, and you'll see people who have elevated moods, but that doesn't tell the whole story. The triggers, the onset of the symptoms, how they manifest, the way they show up is going to be different for everyone. And so I think it's really important that we make sure people understand and have a really solid foundation what we're talking about when we talk about mental illness, what it is, what it isn't, and the fact that we're all at risk. If you have a brain, you are at risk. But it's a spectrum, and we move along that spectrum based on what's going on in our life. So I could live with a serious mental illness diagnosis and have a rich, full, wonderful life. I can live without a mental health diagnosis and have really poor mental health. And so we're all over that kind of map, if you will. And I think if we really want to make a difference and help people who are struggling, help family members who are supporting people who are living with mental illness, we have to make sure that we all know what we're talking about, that we are on the same page. And Nami-Nyc was actually founded 40 years ago. This is our 40th anniversary.
Marvelous.
And we are truly a grassroots organization. Some people don't like that word, but we love it because it's our origin story from 40 years ago, and it's still really at the heart of who we are and what we do today. So 40 years ago, there were a group of parents who were all caring for their children who had behavioral health challenges, mental health challenges, and they were literally sitting around one of their kitchen tables and said, there is nothing out there for us. We are going to do it ourselves. And that's when the organization was born. And all of these years later, families helping families, individuals helping individuals is the heart of what we do. And that validation, that support that you get when you talk about what you're going through and you see someone nodding because they truly understand, that is such an extraordinary connection and a lifeline to know that you are not alone in the face of illnesses and situations where you could not feel more alone.
Oh, Matt, that is incredibly powerful. And it's something we talk about on this broadcast so often because Well, you know, Sheila Warnock and her creating of Share the Care there, and that's just one of so many. And Sam Simon with his performance of the actual dance. So many of the really powerful resources in the world of family caregiving were begun by a caregiver who said, this wasn't here when I need it, but I can contribute it now. These are the heroes to me, as are these folks of yours sitting around those kitchen tables saying, there's nothing there for us. And instead of just saying, oh, woe is me, they said, but we're here. Yeah. What can we do? I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, it's really been extraordinary. And we carry it through not only as our kind of model, if you will, or not our theme, but we live it, because the way our programs work is we have a train the trainer model. So if you call our helpline, or you come to one of our support groups, or you take a class, or you come to a stigma reduction presentation, the group is led by, or the class is taught by, or the presenter is either someone living with mental illness themselves who's in recovery, or a family member. So we have programs for family and friends. We have programs for individuals who are living with mental health issues. And everything we do is sort of run in that parallel process. And when you come to a program or you call the helpline, you're talking to people with skin in the game. You're talking to trained volunteers who came through those programs. Those programs, they say, change their lives. How do I get more involved? I want to pay it forward. I want to give back. Or we might say, I think you'd be really good at this. Have you thought, is that something you want to do? And then we send them to a training program. We have a rigorous training program for everything we do. And they come back, and now that's how we're able to grow and scale and reach even more people. So it's not some expert at the front of the room standing and talking to everyone, and everyone else is sitting. We are all sitting around this table, or around this Zoom room, as the case is today. And I'm just like all of you. I'm living in the same situations that you are. I just happen to go and get that training so that I can facilitate this. But I am among you. I am with you. And
now, I think that I'm going to just interrupt 1 second, because that is so much the gift of people who have done the biggest journey in the world, going from their head to their heart.
Yeah.
And what a gift you're offering. Now, we have a piece of a video, but I think this would be a marvelous moment for us to ask Jean to play that for us. And then we'll continue I love this conversation. Jean, can you give us the show, as it were? There we go.
I've been managing a mental health diagnosis since 2006. However, I've been managing it on my own. I was kind of bursting at the seams. I was just like looking for a community. So I walked through the doors one day, and I haven't looked back.
There's so many people who suffer from mental illness. And it's amazing to me that in 2020, there's still a stigma. People with mental illness, in my opinion, are warriors. It's not an easy path by any stretch of the imagination. I think if people had a deeper understanding of it, which I really feel is what NAMI does.
NAMI opens doors that some people think are closed.
What NAMI has to offer in terms of education, advocacy, and support, which has helped someone like myself and people that I know find recovery, stay in recovery, and get back to recovery once you've had a relapse, is priceless.
The first day when I came into that office, it was very empowering for me. I was like, thank you, Lord, I'm at home.
I fell head over heels in love with a wonderful man who has a mental diagnosis. I remember when he first decided to tell me, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, you're great, you're fine, so no big deal. And then it was like, oh, I need to learn how to talk to you. I need to learn how to listen to you. And I need to learn how to observe and understand that this is an illness. I just didn't know. And having NAMI, now I know, and I feel better.
In the Latinx community, sometimes we don't talk about mental health. NAMI opened the door for me to engage with people in person and be able to have those type of conversations about anxiety, about depression, about the things that I never talk about in my house.
In coming to NAMI, I started looking at my mental health diagnosis not as like a hindrance or like this scarlet letter, because you do feel like that.
I'm at a place where people understand me. They don't look at me strange and they don't talk to me funny.
I wish I had known about NAMI when I was going through it, because a big part of my story was I was going to this psychiatrist and this therapist, and it was like nobody was really able to help. I came to NAMI, I feel like, from a different perspective in that, oh my God, I made it. I want to give back.
I'm a firm believer of helping others helps you.
I love being a volunteer and a leader because everything's so peer-led. I'm getting something out of it at the same time that I'm noticing other people getting something out of it. And what we're offering is free because of the hard work of the fundraisers and the money and the donations that go into it to keep these programs free. And I just 100% believe in what we're offering.
When the pandemic started, it was so like abrupt. A lot of us was stuck in our house with our conditions. So for NAMI to transfer everything to like an online space was a relief.
I think that says a lot about NAMI, that they were able to stay steadfast during a very challenging time where not only people suffer from mental illness, but people in general need that support.
NAMI is doing a fantastic job. And I'm so proud to be part of that family.
I feel comforted knowing that I have a place that I can go to, or I can call and say, you know what, something's not right, symptoms are coming up, what do you suggest?
NAMI has helped me to use my voice. NAMI has helped me to hear my own voice and what it means to stand up for myself.
It feels like I'm part of a big movement, but yet part of a very local family community too.
NAMI has helped me so much. First, they helped me to accept I had an illness and that it was okay. My name is not my diagnosis. My name is Cynthia, and that's who I go by. It's given me, too, the acceptance of myself, because now I love myself.
That is just incredible. Thank you, Jean, for sharing that. And thank you. That is a piece of a longer tape that was part of your wonderful online gala this year. But I think it speaks so tremendously. I'm just sitting here with, I call them God bumps, because it's just the divine in action. These wonderful people, awareness, acceptance and action. I mean, that simple, that comes from my life with AA, and let's just talk a moment, because several of them spoke there before we go into the pandemic. The biggest issue I often think is the word stigma. We are physical, emotional, and spiritual human beings, and I'm talking that all the time when I'm talking about family caregivers. Frankly, when I'm talking about anybody, because that's who we are. But when it comes to the mental part, it's all right, we can be physically sick. We can be spiritually sick and disconnected from whatever source of the divine works for us. But there's something about the mental for a very long time. And it's one of the reasons that as an ordained clergy person, I always talk about my therapist for over 30 years. I want people to know that just because someone has a degree as an ordained clergy person, it doesn't mean they've got it all put together. And in fact, the therapist is the most important part in my life, because as someone who receives from other people their cares, I need to deal with that. And the more we talk about it, of course, it's very similar to the rooms of AA. We all learn that pieces of you and pieces of me put us all back together. Yeah. And we can have wonderful lives, because as she said so beautifully, my name is Cynthia. It's not my diagnosis. That is the most powerful. So anyhow, I feel NAMI has done so much to help overcome the stigma. And it's something that I pray this broadcast will help, that People will take this. This is free. It's there. Share it with people. Let them see the face of people in recovery. And I loved also the fact that you spoke about, because it's extremely important, certainly in the world of AA, and that is people who go back out, people who need to re-recover. And what happens? We go deeper. There was something else we needed to learn. It was true in my case. So anyhow, let's talk about stigma for a moment.
Yeah. I think, stigma gets in the way of people understanding that these are real conditions that are having profound effects on the quality of life that individuals have. And I think, we talk about and to people who are living with mental illness in ways that we would never talk to someone who might be experiencing a physical illness. So if someone has cancer, you would never say, oh, well, he's cancer or she's cancer, but we say all the time, oh, he's bipolar or she's schizophrenic. I think we use language in ways that perpetuate stigma and create situations where people feel less comfortable and less safe actually coming forward and talking about what they're going through. So we throw around depression and anxiety as if it's nothing, like, oh, I almost had a panic attack, or I'm really depressed today. And depression is a disease. Sadness is an emotion, but so we throw around depressed. It kind of takes the weight out of it, the serious and the severity of it. The same for anxiety. I think anxiety disorders and panic attacks are not, just getting a little bit nervous. It's much more profound and serious and terrifying and debilitating in many cases. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think we do the same thing with diagnoses like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which are really just misunderstood. I think we blame people living with schizophrenia or we assume, I should reframe that, we assume that people who are committing some horrific, violent act must live with mental illness or must live with schizophrenia by example. I think they often get associated with each other, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, clearly someone who's doing going in somewhere and shooting at strangers, clearly there's something going on for that person right now. They're not in the right frame of mind. There's an issue there. But to say that they're mentally ill, meaning they've lived with a mental health diagnosis, it could be a lot of things. It could be drugs, it could be anger, it could have a mental health component to it, but we just jump to that and use it as a way to describe it. And I think we've demonized people who live with serious mental illness in ways that keep them in the shadows and prevent people from understanding what it really is to live with a condition like that, and what it isn't. It's far more likely for people living with serious mental illness to be victims of violence than it is for them to be perpetrators of violence.
I think that's a very important statement. And one of the things that I would urge people, because I learned a great deal by going to your website, you just look at all the programs you have. There's an educational trip in and of itself. Yeah. Look at what the topics are. Look at and think how you've used some of the words that you see as the names of topics. Yeah. Or the names of groups. And of course, all you needed to do was look at that video to see the inclusivity. In a day where DEI, the diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion, NAMI was there long before, so was AA. We've been doing that for a long time. Yeah. And that's so wonderful because it is an equal opportunity disease.
And so it doesn't matter your race, your gender identity, your sexual orientation, your socioeconomics, where you live in the world, none of that matters. But the other thing that I think is really important to be mindful of is the statistic is that 1 out of 5 of us will be impacted by mental illness each year. But we don't think that tells the full story. 1 out of 5 will live with mental illness, and the other 4 are their family members, their friends, their neighbors, their religious leaders, their social networks, their colleagues. So these are issues that affect all of us, every single one of us. If we are alive today, and after these 2 years, living like that, you can't talk about the pandemic without talking about mental health and the impact that it's had on mental health. But
Exactly.
the other thing I want to say about stigma, because I think too often we put it on the individual who's living with a mental health condition. We say we must create a space where you can feel safe and comfortable coming forward and talking about it. But I don't know if it's entirely fair to put the onus all on the individual. Some of us aren't at a place where we can talk about it yet. So I think in order to move the needle on stigma, we need to continue to push to a world where people can feel safe coming forward. But we also need to create what I call this culture of inquiry, where if I, as a human being, see another human being in pain, see another human being who clearly is struggling, that I find a way and learn how to reach out to that person and check in. And I don't have to fix it. I don't have to be the one to solve it. And I think sometimes the idea that if I open this can of worms, I'm going to be responsible for figuring it out. But we just have to, we can be a bridge to get them connected to all the resources and support that they need. And maybe you're the first person who's ever said, hey, are you okay? What's going on? I'm noticing some changes in you and I'm concerned. Are you okay? And that asking that question can really change things for someone and get them connected. So it's on all of us to really do what we can to reduce the stigma.
Well, you could not have given a better description of family caregiving. I spend my life saying we are caregivers, not cure givers. We leave the cure to other professionals.
Yeah.
But we take what is and we learn about it and we live with and walk with that person that you were talking about who says, there may be something I could do to walk with this person.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible to fix it, but I want that person to know, as I would want to know, that I'm not alone. Yeah. And that, as Jean said at the opening of the program, knowing we're not alone.
Absolutely.
I could talk with you forever. Now, I want to, because we've led right into it, the pandemic, when you talked about the 1 in 5, I have spent more time in the last 2.5 years sitting right where I am. If anyone would have told me I was going to do hundreds, if not thousands, of one-on-one counseling in this method, I would have said, I can't do that. And then if I were to be told that I was actually going to conduct memorial services sitting in my bedroom, but it worked. And it's been very effective in very, very different ways. Tell us the story with Nami. And before I do that, I just want to say once again, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and you are the branch in New York, but for those in the United States, there are many branches locally. I mean, I know you love to have your telephone busy, but we want people to know that NAMI is a national organization. It says it, but of course we know New York is the center of the world, but are we prejudiced? Please don't take that the wrong way, folks. But talk to us about what you went through having to take, I mean, a support group, because I was doing it in another way with the caregiving groups. I couldn't go and be with them. I couldn't literally be present. So we had to find alternatives. And tell us, how has that impacted NAMI?
Yeah, it's been really extraordinary. So we prior to the middle of March in 2020, we did literally nothing through technology. We didn't provide any support, any programming, virtually, digitally at all. And when the pandemic hit, we had to make that transformation, and we knew we needed to do it quickly, because if there ever was a time when New Yorkers needed us, it was then. Our phones, the calls to our helpline increased 200% in the early days of the pandemic. And very quickly, I can't say enough about our extraordinary staff and our incredible volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers, like Cynthia, Michael, and the others you saw, and several of the others you saw in the video, who helped us to run and facilitate our programs, like I mentioned earlier. And everyone did their part to make sure that we could make this transformation. And we did it. We started meeting literally every day at 12 o'clock noon to come together on Zoom and figure out what had to happen next, because like everyone else, we didn't have any time to plan or prepare in advance for it. So I'm so proud to say that very quickly we were able to offer every single thing every program that we offered before the pandemic is available now. And that, I think, was if not by April, by May of 2020. And thank goodness, because we served 52% more individuals last year than we did the year before.
Amazing.
And touching the lives of 30,000. I used to say New Yorkers, but now with the pandemic, when this sort of, I don't want to detract from the seriousness and the impact and the trauma of the last 2 years. But there have been some silver linings for us. First, I think pushing us into the 21st century, we will never go back to not offering programs like this. It's working so well for us in so many ways. It's working so well for us, meaning that the people are really coming. And I think through an access lens, being able to click a link in the comfort of wherever you may be, or dial in and be on the phone, has enabled us to serve many, many, many more people. But I think even more than that, and this actually didn't occur to me until we were pretty deep into the pandemic. But before the pandemic, you had to come to our office in Midtown Manhattan, you had to check in the lobby, come up to the 11th floor, and walk through a door that says mental illness on it. And if that's your first time, if you're just starting to realize maybe I need some assistance, maybe I need support for myself, for my family member, for my friend, that's a big ask, not knowing what's on the other side of the door, not knowing what to expect. I can imagine people trying to make that journey several times before completing it, or if they ever complete it, coming to the door even and being like, you know what, I'm not ready yet, and leaving. And now I could turn my camera off, I can change my name to anything I want, and I can check it out. I can dip my toe in the Nami-Nyc water, if you will, and see what it's like and experience it. And the beauty of the work that we do is we don't open cases and close cases. We're not doing treatment. We're a peer support model, education support and advocacy. So you can come and go as you please. You want to come to every group, or the group every time the group meets, every week, that's perfect. You want to come once and then come back when you need it again and be gone for a little while, that's perfect too. So it's really, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. We want to have as wide a front door as we can with as few barriers to entry as possible. And this is allowing for that. We do public education events. They're once a month. They're topical, so they're different topics every month. And we used to get a donated space or do it in our office, a church, a library. And depending on the topic and the weather, because if it's pouring, you're not going to leave your house and come. This is before the pandemic. We'd get maybe 18 to 40 people. And they were great meetings. Now, we have over 1,000 people usually register. And typically, a typical public education meeting will have 500 people there. And it's extraordinary. 49 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and some 37 countries, similar to what you were saying before about this broadcast. Think of what that means, that people in Jakarta, California, and around the globe can access these kinds of conversations that may otherwise have only been available to the people who are in the room. So the pandemic has changed us in so many ways, and it's been a real challenge. But I feel so grateful to the team, the staff, and the volunteers. Our board of directors has been extraordinary. They're fantastic. And we're meeting the moment. And we have continued to grow and add programming in strategic ways. So we're not looking to reinvent the wheel or duplicate things that exist to the extent that we don't need to. What we try to find are opportunities to meet an unmet need in our community. So when George Floyd was murdered, we launched Black Minds Matter. When the anti-Asian violence was erupting, we launched a support group for members of the AAPI community. Recognizing that our LGBTQ brothers and sisters are struggling, we launched LGBTQ peer-to-peer class, which is our class for people living with mental illness. And the LGBTQ class was for people who identify as a member of the community who are living with mental illness. That spun off into a support group. We're adding live Spanish interpretation, live ASL interpretation, closed captions on our events, offering many programs in different languages, adding a language line. We're trying to be really responsive, starting more programs focusing on suicide prevention as those numbers continue to rise, focusing on young adults who we know are really struggling so much right now, focusing on Black and Brown communities, older adults, deaf and hard of hearing, non-native English speakers, really just trying to have as broad an impact as possible and create a place where people can see themselves. Because when you see, as Jean said, as you said, when you see that you are not alone, there's so much power in that. And we won't go back. We will, without a doubt, and I hope that 2022 is the year, we will return to real life programs and services. We're a high touch organization. We're really about bringing people together in a room. And if it has to be a Zoom room, it'll be a Zoom room, but I can't wait until we are able to open our offices again and bring our community back together again.
Matt, you are incredible, and all I can say is you're coming back, because this conversation could go on and on and on. I'm sitting here just overwhelmed and teary by hearing so much good news. Hearing how you are meeting people at their point of need, not trying to that they got to be anything they're special enough by just being a child of the divine, and that's Greg talking, but it's what it's about. Love you just the way you are, and together we're going to walk through this thing called life. But what you are doing, the diversity of the groups, and the minute you hear something, you say, yes, there's a group of people that need this conversation, and finding the peer leaders is so important. So I'm going to ask now Jakarta to return to us. Jean, can you join in with us? Yes, there you are. Well, we may have another language for you, Matt, because he speaks Bahasa very well.
Well, talking about Bahasa or even English or anything, well, the common language for everyone is the language of love. And well, Greg, when I heard Matt's story, I mean, it's just like how I wish we have NAMI office in Indonesia. I mean, you have like 37 countries, and you have been working on this work for just like 40 years. And I would say that you will be even busier for the next 40 years, or even just like for the next century, because recently there are so many mental illness that caused by social media, especially for the young adults, or even just like for the teenagers, and they do not know how to deal with that. I mean, their parents, because it's not exist on their period of time. And also when you are talking about like the peer support or something, and this is just like our experience. So when Greg and I are trying to discuss the options, so am I going to move to New York, or you are going to move to Indonesia, to Bali, or to wherever? And the first thing that we think about is just like, we cannot be together openly. We cannot get married here in Indonesia. So one of the challenges here is being a part of the LGBT community. That creates like a big mental illness for so many young gay and lesbian people in Indonesia. And when last week I shared the Queer Eye TV series. I mean, it's just like the 5 Feb that helping like someone. Well, maybe they do not experience like mental illness, but it's just like the example that there are so many people that think they are okay, they are doing fine until someone that close to them, maybe their family, maybe their friends, we need to do something with him or with her. And Greg, you've seen the episodes and you told me you cannot stop crying. And I said that, yeah, that's what we need to do for others. And that is what Matt and Nami have been done for the last 40 years. And well, I hope that we will be able just to cover more and more people, because out there are so many people that need this support, just like what Nami provide. So thank you, Matt. I mean, it's excellent. And once again, I wish there is like a Nami here in Indonesia.
Well, I have a
so
feeling
appreciate
you're
it.
getting ready to do that, Donnie. Gene, I'm all right.
Yeah, and I think, Gene, what you're saying, I really appreciate it, because I think one of the things that we want to try and celebrate is when people come forward and talk openly about their own situation. Because when you take that step on social media, we see it all the time. People are coming out about their own mental health issues, talking about it openly, and that gives people permission to do the same. Every time I go and tell my story, someone sees it and feels I can tell my story too. And that's really how we create this groundswell, and that ends up reducing the stigma as well. The more we normalize talking about these issues, they're affecting so many of us.
Yes.
And if we don't talk about it, it just stays in the shadows. So I really appreciate what you were saying.
And I'm going to say to our guests, you're part of that conversation. Many of you are leaders in various ways within your communities, within your states, within your nations, because we have people of all levels who join in these programs. Take and share this. Just pull up a chair with the three of us. We're sitting around the world, as it were, and we need you to sit with us and to do the most important thing. You heard me say it before, but the power of stories, that's the honesty, because it's pieces of you and pieces of me that put us all back together. Matt, God bless you. God bless Nami. We are so thrilled to have had you with us. And I assure you, Gene and I will look forward to doing part 2, because there's so much more to talk about. Gene, can you just put up, before we leave, the slides so that people can get the contact for Matt and for Nami? This has been the most wonderful, wonderful time together. Thank you, Gene, for your tender and precious words. I can't wait to meet you at the airport on February 12. I'll be the welcome dance. There it is, Matt Kuddish, Executive Director, National Alliance on Mental Illness, we'll fix that, of New York. Matt, and you see his email, and you see the phone number, and you see the helpline. To everyone, we say an enormous, enormous thank you for this wonderful time together. Time has just flown. But as we always conclude our program, onward in love and caregiving. Namaste. God bless, and we'll see you real soon. Thank you.